running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans, welcome to the Talking in Ovals podcast. I hope everyone is doing well out there on this Monday, April 11th of 2023. As always, I'm Alex Cuesta. My partner in crime is over there, Dave Hyatt. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. Getting excited. We're starting to get some track again every single weekend. So it's a great time of the year, having people qualify for the Penn Relays, and great time of year.
And ridiculous races and ridiculous early season times that we have seen. It's ridiculous. It really is. And
insanity.
I have to make a correction. I said Monday, April 11th. Today is Tuesday, April 11th for anyone that's listening. We are a day late on the recording. We had some technical difficulties as of yesterday, but we're here. We're going to bring you a show every single week. So count on that if you're looking forward to it. Sorry, we're a day late. Before we get into anything fun, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. And as always, go find us on social media. Just search Talking in Ovals. You'll see the logo. We are there. Hyatt, we have a PR. I feel like we have the first of many.
We do.
We have from Lacey, good friend, Coach Geiger, Anna Roth set a school record in the triple jump at 36 feet, 7 inches. So we want to give her a shout out. She is our lone PR of this week, or PB if you're old school, but we have it. So thank you, Coach. Congrats, Anna. And we're looking forward to more. We're going to keep fishing for more, right, Coach?
Absolutely.
Yes. So before we jump into,
I also want to give
go for it.
Shout out to I think it's Victor McFarland from Manchester. Start off the season with a 175-foot throw in the jab, qualified for the Penn Relays.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Awesome job over there, Manchester. We always love giving shout outs to the alma mater, whether it's me as a runner, Dave as a coach. But last week's show, we had an awesome show last week. We had Bob Farrell, director of Rutgers cross country and track and field. And, we're both Jersey boys. You're a Rutgers alumni. And it was just a breath of fresh air to hear the way Coach Farrell talked about the program, the direction that he has it going. And if you're interested in, the State School of New Jersey, Rutgers, and going to see what's going on there, or if you're an athlete that's undecided, go give a listen to that show, because it'll give you good perspective on what a big time Division I program is looking for in an athlete. So I was pumped about that. Hyatt, you had a good time talking to him as well. I know you did, reminiscing about Rutgers stuff and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Bob since high school, so it was cool just to see how far he's gone and the great things that him and Coach Jelly are doing over there at my alma mater and the wonderful State College of this great state.
And Coach Jelly, don't think you're safe. We're coming for you. You'll be on the show as well. You're not safe. No one's safe. No one in New Jersey that has anything affiliated with track and field is safe. And that also has to do with our current guest tonight, because this is someone that when we started the podcast, Dave and I were thinking about people we want to get. And obviously we were talking about the big time runners and things like that. And then we're like, there's some really awesome people that we knew both, in our life, in our career, in running, in coaching and things. And this individual was somebody that we were definitely like, if we could figure out a way to get him, that's going to be a really cool show. So I'd like to introduce our next guest. He is a Hall of Fame track and field coach, one of the most prominent. He coached one of the most prominent athletes to win 2 Olympic gold medals. That's Andrew Valmon. And he's one of the winningest coaches in the short conference and state history. He's Manchester Township's very own, very well known as the voice of the Hawks, Rob Conover. What's going on, Coach?
Howdy, fellas. Before I need to take and create a window of perspective. I turned 78 years old on Easter Sunday.
Happy birthday.
So we're going to be stretching the show out a little bit. But before I do, I want to give creds to Coach Griff, Jay at Manchester. I couldn't be happier having him aboard and not just imagining, but knowing the success that he's going to have. He's an outstanding coach. He was an outstanding athlete. He's an outstanding human being. Manchester, the Hawks are fortunate. All right. 1972, I was hired at the Whiting School for $9,200. Now, that sounds lofty, but it was only lofty because I had 4 years of military service. So I got the big boost to $9,200. Oh, and they threw in another $100 if I coach cross country. Now that, you know what? I don't have your faces on here. Let's see if I mash this. There you go.
We're
Handsome. Here. Okay. So I jumped on that job, and my wife, Jen, was so excited. Came out to the car, whoo, and everything started. Now, back then, I coached cross country. I ran Whiting School invitationals. You'd get about 12 schools. There were 7th and 8th graders from as far north as Rutherford. So track and field was starting in the Manchester school system, 1972. I can even back up a little bit more and throw my family under the bus. But my wife and I had the Conover Track Club when Adele was 8, Ross was 6, and Garrett was 4. And we used to have them competing in their little shirts in the Schmertz games over in Toms River. I don't know whether the Schmertz games were around when you guys were younger, but it was a special thing. Special indeed. All right. Now let's buzz right along here.
Let's do it. So, Coach, I just have to ask real quick. You're there. You're over at Whiting School. You're starting a program now. Obviously, Manchester is young, right? There was no high school yet at that time, if I'm correct. And you're going in there. And what was your, as you're getting going, I want you to kind of delve into, because you're going to go through a lot of what you did with starting the programs and things like that and stuff, right, at Manchester. I also want you to see if you can do perspective of the pressures of being this little school surrounded by all these giants in Toms River, Jackson, Brick, because I think people will be interested in hearing about that as well. So go ahead, keep going. We're letting you go, brother. Go for it.
I hear you. And by the way, I mean, we were the Whiting School back then. When our kids left 8th grade, they went to Lakewood. And nobody was even thinking about a high school. And back in those days, the Lakehurst kids went to Central. So, yeah. And in Whiting, I remember it specifically. There was a one pump gas station and a post office. That was it for Whiting. And the Board of Ed building. And then, of course, the Whiting School. It was a special time. Now, back in those early years, the high school was built in 76. Bob Janone is the first head coach. I was one of his assistants, and Jim Vescovi of Point Pleasant was the other assistant. We didn't win any meets. And we were teaching kids to pole vault by planting the pole against the parking curbs in the parking lot. We didn't have a track. We used to run around the half-mile oval in front of the school. It was really a pretty messy thing. We had to drag the mats. We didn't have storage places for the mats, and every time you set things up, you had to break them down. It was tough. So some of the early kids. I remember our first county champion, and this would have been probably about 77, was Bobby Francis.
And that name was all over the walls. That name was everywhere when I was in the high school, Bob Francis.
Yep. Hey, Bobby was he was also a running back on the football team. He threw the shot for me. He was throwing just under 50 feet. And Bobby won the 100 meters, 100-yard dash. We weren't doing meters then. He won the 100-yard dash.
Nope, all yards.
Yep. And the guys that were working, the officials working the finish line, they had them old clocks where you had to watch the hand go around. And the best you were going to do was 10. There was no hundreds. And the guys would pick them out and hit the clock, hit the watch. God, I remember one time the guy picked the wrong guy. It was so, and you could argue your heart out. But Bobby was the first.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, no, it didn't matter. And then all of a sudden, this young man comes along, and I think he came from Jackson, and his name was Oscar Valmon. Very polite young man, lean. He had the look of an athlete, and I turned him loose on the track, and he knew more about track and field than I did when he got there. He had been running at Jackson. He was a very good high jumper, long jumper. He ran the 330-yard hurdles and the high hurdles. And he scored in the county meet in a couple of events. And I think I mentioned to Dave when we were chatting, if I was a better coach, Oscar Valmon would have been everything his younger brother Andrew was. He was extraordinarily talented, just a great kid. And he had so much to do with the formation of the team because he brought on success. And, I'd like to stand here and say, well, you walk in, you got a team, they immediately respect you and everything's good from. No, it's not that way. Not that way. Kids will respect you if you demonstrate that you respect them, that you believe in them, and empower them. Doesn't hurt to have some on the team, though. So we're rolling along here and not doing well. I remember the first meet we won was against Point Pleasant Borough. That was our first victory, and that was very exciting. And I think that year we were 1-10. Yeah, and then Oscar came along. We won some meets, and things began to change. I went to workshops. I was not a track runner.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. Yeah, what were the aspects that you did? Because your background, as we know, is in gymnastics. You were a fantastic gymnast. So what did you use? You were just talking about workshops. When you got into it and you were kind of like, okay, I'm coaching track and field, I'm coaching cross country. What did you use to kind of learn? And how much did you learn from the athletes? You mentioned Oscar. Like, how much did they teach you at that time about track and field?
They taught me a lot. And not only that, I was an inquisitive young man. I learned from other coaches, other programs. I brought people. I mean, you mentioned Matt Jelly earlier. Matt Jelly was a regular in the Conover household. I don't know whether you guys know that.
No, I didn't know that.
I do.
Okay. I mean, I can remember him wrestling with my sons, Ross and Garrett, in the living room. And I love the hell out of Matt Jelly. He's a great guy. And I brought in guys like him to talk to my teams. I searched out and did the best I could to surround myself with people with a background. For example, John Musoff had a background in weights and the pole vault.
Yep.
Walt Polakowski, affectionately nicknamed the Tin Man, worked with cross country, and he was a distance guy. So now we were starting to put things together. And Muse and Walter and myself, there was something special about us. We all lived in Manchester Township. We all had kids that went to went to school in Manchester Township.
Yep.
We were a part of a big family, and that was the way we tried to make things. So we're rolling along, and things happen that elevate you in the eyes of the youngsters. Some of them planned, some of them not planned. As an example, I always believed, and I do to this day, in coaching up. When you talk to a kid, when you talk to a team, you empower them, you coach them up, you make them believe, and then you work them so damn hard that when it comes to the last 200 meters of the race, the final throw, the final jump, they remember all the work they put into it. And they're not backing off to anyone. And the Manchester kids responded to that, and they were amazing. So here's a cute little story. I used to like to talk to them in the team room, and the team room was just a little room. It wasn't big at all. Dave knows what it is, and certainly you do, Alex.
Yep.
And I used to, the team room I'd be surrounded by them, and it had a hard floor, tile floor, and I used to like to talk with a baton in my hand. I don't know why. Maybe it made me look more tracky. But I talked with a baton in my hand, and I was upset with the team. I was angry with them, was angry with some workouts, angry with performances, and I didn't mind telling them, and I didn't mind calling them out. But I also didn't mind patting them on the back and elevating them when they responded. Well, I had this baton, and I'm talking to them, and I'm angry. And I take the baton, and I'm emphasizing a point, and I throw the baton onto that floor. Now, that baton could have hit on the tip and bounced anywhere in that room. Well, it didn't. The baton hit flat bounced up in front of me. I grabbed it up here and said, and another thing. The whole room went, hush. Yeah, they're like, special.
So, Coach, I have to ask you, with your coaching style, because that's not just your coaching style. I know from experience, from you knowing a lot of my family members, from you being there with, John Portaways and coaching with him, and, being with my cousins, my sister, and everything like that. Like, my family's a Manchester family. And for me being there for the few years I was with you at the high school, and it was wonderful just being able to walk into your office. You were always open door, especially with all the athletes. You were great. But that's your style of coaching up. That's not just you, that's you as a person. You're more of you like to build people up in that way. Are you kind of envious of the technology and the things that some coaches and athletes know now? And you think that would have melded with your style of coaching, with how, a lot of coaches communicate much more now and what athletes need, and there's more technology in tracking workouts and nutrition and things like that. Do you feel like your coaching style would have been able to adapt to this current environment? Or are you much more of an old school coach where it was a little more accountability than I think some of these athletes have now?
Truthfully speaking, I'm frightened of all that dang gum stuff. I was old school, and I'm frightened of it. And that's, I didn't even join the Coaches Association, the Shore Conference, or Ocean County Coaches Association. I gave all my time to the kids in Manchester. And you guys know I was also the recreation director and a big guy with 3 children. And the time I wasn't with Manchester kids, coaching, teaching, recreating, I was with my family. And I didn't have time for the other things. And I don't see myself spreading and playing the message game with all of that. I got the Ocean County Observer because it gave me a breakdown of every team so that I could sit with Muse and the Tin Man and we'd work out our strategy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And otherwise I was nuts and bolts. That was my team, and I liked it that way. I much preferred it that way. Technology scares me. I heard you guys when you were doing Jason Griffin. They were talking about Stava or something.
Strava,
Strava. And so we're in the car coming back from Fort Lauderdale, and I said, Jan, I don't even know what the hell they're talking about. So she Googled, found out it was an app or whatever, and I thought, oh my heavens, things have just left me in the past. I'm blown away.
So speaking of those types of things, you're obviously a part of the high school, a part of the program for a really, really long time. What was it like seeing the adaptations to the sports and having new and younger coaches coming on with some new ideas? And, obviously, especially you and Coach Musoff were there for a very long time, very involved, doing the programs. And then eventually you switched to athletic director. Muse stayed there, but still very involved. What was that like? This was your baby. Like, you guys created these programs. Obviously, Coach Musoff with indoor, you in there with outdoor. Like, was there a struggle to kind of give the reins up at times to some new ideas?
Of course. I also, as you guys were saying, was voice of the Hawks. So I was up in the booth doing football, varsity football games, wrestling matches, basketball. Oh, I did basketball for I can't tell you how many years, and everything was to raise the culture among Manchester students. Now, the culture I was most interested in was track and field, and we were fortunate in that. I think the first year we won the C division because that's how the Shore Conference was broken down, and the little scrap schools were in the C. Well, C, and I talked the athletic department into buying jackets for the kids. So now the kids are wearing championship jackets. All of a sudden, you have a tool, because if you want to be a successful coach, you absolutely have to reach out and draw, especially in a small school, guys. Every available athlete out. every one. You can't miss a single one. And that was a selling point for me. And then after Andrew Valmon, now I had immediate respect. At that point, people are saying, oh, Conover knows how to put together a workout. Look at that. He's got a guy winning an Olympic gold medal. I think we need to listen to this man. Well, if you really know Andrew Valmon, and I mean, the true story of Andrew is I knew Oscar. I knew what Oscar brought to the game. And when Andrew became a freshman, he was all basketball, basketball, basketball. And I said, no. I said, you play your basketball, and now you're going to run track. He said, I don't want to run track. I said, Andrew. He said, I'm not like my brother Oscar. I'm going to be a great basketball player. Oscar didn't play basketball, and he didn't. Andrew Valmon was not going to run track. He told me flat out, well, I'm not one to back off quickly or easily. And I stayed behind. I contacted his parents through Oscar, aunts, uncles. I was all over that family. And I told them, he's not coming to practice. He said he would. He's not. I'm going to wait for him at the bus, and I'm not letting him get on the bus. And they said, do what you have to do, Coach. Andrew went to get on the bus.
Gotta love parents like that.
Yep.
I said, Andrew, where are you going? He said, I'm going home. No, you're not. You're coming with Coach Conover. No, I don't want to run track. I don't want to run track. Come on. And I strong-armed him. I took him down there. I took him to the side by himself. I'm not going to embarrass him. And I said, now, look, all I really want you to do is give me 2 weeks. You give me 2 weeks of letting you work out with the team and letting you feel the feeling of just exploding and running past people. It's an amazing feeling, and it's one that you have in your heart, soul, and the dynamic body that God gave you. And I put him out on the track. He was a wind-up toy. The only thing I did with him that might have been a little different is every time that everybody ran and worked out, he was in the outside lane. But we all started at the same point, but he had to stay in the outside lane all the time. And as a freshman, he was outrunning everyone. He recognized his talent. I think it scared him, but I had him.
Do you also think part of that was Oscar was successful and he just didn't want to be his brother? Do you think there was part of that, like, pushback, like he wanted to be Andrew Valmon, like he didn't want to run track? That was his brother's thing. So, or was it just him being a stubborn 14-year-old kid and wanting to love basketball?
A little of both. I really don't know. Andrew wasn't afraid of challenges. I think he wanted a distinct athletic personality, and track had already been taken in the Valmon family. And for whatever reason, he didn't think that he would be better than Oscar or as good, and that might have clouded things for him. But I guess obviously that wasn't the case. And I'd like to take credit for Andrew, and I have taken credit for him, but I won't on this show because I'm telling the truth. But when it came to recruiting kids in the hall, well, I take them in the gym. You've seen that monstrous painting on the wall, the Andrew Valmon stuff.
Yep.
Now, you want to talk about selling a kid on a program. You bring him in there, you put your arm around him like I did with Skeets Hester, Kevin Hester. And I said, Kevin, I've been watching track and field athletes for 15 years, at that time closer to 20. And I can look at you and know that you will be one of the best jumpers and sprinters in the entire short conference. And I hate to break your heart, but you're not going to be one of the best basketball players in the short conference. Coach, I said, you give me a chance. You see that on the wall? There might be a little one underneath it with you, because that's how good you're going to be. Now, that was like around 1996. And the 97...
Yeah, because I actually graduated in a 96, and I knew that Manchester was going to be unbelievable because I was at High School South, and I graduated in 96. I'm like, I'm glad that I'm leaving now because there's going to be an absolute juggernaut coming really, really like, soon in these races.
Well, that team, without Hester and Roach, won the freshman and sophomore county and shore meets. So I knew I had something on my hands. And I said, how can I top this off? And I went out and I got Hester and I got Roach. And that put it together. And, you know, we've seen the results of the 97, 98 team. They were scary. In fact,
they were insane.
Tonight, you guys, I've been away from the game a long time. And during that time, I watch a little track and field if I can catch it here or there, but I haven't gone overboard with it. So I'm out of it. And being 78 years old, I said to myself, I got to talk to Han. I got to give Heat a call, because Han was the numbers man. Han is the guy that's going to say, "Oh yeah, coach, don't you remember when someone?" Yes,
Coach. Dave. We have a surprise guest for you who just popped on. I don't know if you could see who it is, but it's Mr. Ian Han himself is joining us on this podcast.
That's perfect.
Coach, what's happening?
How'd you do in your pickleball game?
I did fabulous. I'm actually driving home for it now. Sorry if the video's going. I don't even know how to stop it. I'm trying to stop at the light. But how are you guys?
We're doing great. We're long. They haven't asked me any hard questions yet.
I'm sure when they do, you're going to be killing it.
But I did just mention.
Well, actually, I did just about in the 97, 98 teams. I want to hear all about those journeys. And now that we have Ian on, it's just going to be great to have you guys kind of reminisce about.
Because he's the one that remembers better than me.
Go back memory lane.
But here's what I did. So I was picking Ian's brain, and I remembered that we had an outstanding sprint medley team in '98, and it was second in the nation.
Yep.
And in fact, we had won the East Coast relay with the team running 327, and that was with Roach and Hester running 200s. Dan Breezy ran the 4, and Han ran a 150 anchor on the 8, and that was a great team.
Yeah.
Also had a good distance medley that was 5th in the East, and that was Dan Breezy in the 4, my son Garrett in the 8, Mike Hoffman in the 3/4, and Ian Heat ran the mile, and they ran 10.
We had some really good relays, Coach. They were our 4x4 was awesome. Our sprint medley was the one I was most proud of. Like, just one going there and dominating the East Coast relays, and like a who's of guys in the sprint medley. Like it was, and I just remember, as I've talked to Coach about this before, I remember I was training through the East Coast relays because I didn't think it was going to be like this stacked race. And I was trying to get, and the East Coast relays were in Morristown on like a Tuesday, and we were coming up on the state meets. And I was like, I'm going to train through it, did a hard workout. And then we show up to Morristown, and it was like the who's of guys on the East Coast. And I was like, oh man, like what did I just do to myself? And I ended up running like probably one of my best races, arguably my senior year, on the anchor that I came from behind, ran low 150. It was such a fun race and fun time. And we dominated the East Coast relays then.
Yes, we did. We had a lot of success there. And honestly, I think that might have been the first year for the East Coast relays. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it's the first one I remember.
I think it was earlier because I remember going when I was in high school, and it was always on a Tuesday, and it was always up in Morristown, and it was like there was always good teams there. It was like the last like relay meet that you could really run and kind of put your best teams together.
Yeah, and you get like the stud teams from like New York, because Morristown's right up there, so it's like not a big deal for all those really good like Regis teams were there, and just you get a couple Pennsylvania teams, and it for whatever reason I don't know if I don't know what it was, but that I just I took it for granted, and that was a loaded meet. We ended up out kicking Plainfield at the end to win. And Plainfield was a stud team. They had lot of good sprinters and the good 800 guy. They were stacked all around, but it was a really, really good race, man. But our relay teams are, we had some national success, just not local success with those teams.
Sure. The high jump relay, you had Skeets Hester was jumping, well, he jumped 6'10", but he'd give you 6'8" in a high jump relay every time.
Easy,
And in 97, when we had CJ, I had him both 6'8". And And then I had David Anderson at 6'4". I had
Steve Hankins at 6'2".
and won the high jump in '99. I mean, Hankins, you gotta tip your hat to Hankins. 97, 98, he was a outstanding high jumper that would have been number 2 on any team in maybe the Shore, and he had 2 guys in front of him at Manchester, and sometimes 3.
So, Coach, did it come to a point in your career where, you're going through, you start the program in 76, you have Valmon, you have all these things that come along to you, and now you're here in 97, 98. Was there just an expectation that if we, between you, Coach Musoff, and others, if we have talent, we can cultivate it? Was there a confidence in you as a coach and in your coaching staff that if we see talent in an athlete, that we're good enough as coaches, that because, you can have guys like Ian, who is extremely talented, but if they're a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid with no direction, they might not, they might run well, but then, they'll blossom in college. But you had individuals competing at a high level in high school. Was there just a confidence in you guys as a staff and as a personal coach that if you had talented guys that at some point, like, we're just going to make them the best that they could be possibly?
Alex, I can only speak for myself with respect to the 97, 98 teams, because at that point, Musoff had gone to the baseball program, and Walt Polakowski had retired from coaching. Let's put it that way. But when we were together as a threesome, yes, we absolutely believed that 100%. And I told you from the beginning, I've always believed in empowering the kids. Make them believe in themselves, and great things will happen. And great things did happen. To give you another little bit of background, and I don't know whether Ian knows this, but I was retiring after the 94 season, and I was going to go into administration. And I made a point of trying not to coach my own kids. I believe that, and that's Little League, it's Pop Warner. I believe that if they were going to have success, they weren't going to have success because their dad put them on the pitching mound and their dad batted them leadoff. They were going to earn it on their own. And so I had pretty much avoided coaching them. And my son Garrett came to me and he said, "Dad, what do you mean you're retiring? I want you to coach me. I want to run track and field, and I want you to coach me." Oh, I took a deep breath. I had already lost Musoff and Polakowski. I'm going to have to put this whole thing together. And I came home and I said to my wife, Jan, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do it like I've ever done anything before. I am going to go not 100%. I'm going 130. And I'm going after all the athletes. And we're going to put something together that's going to be special. And that's the way I'm going to end my career. And that is that. And to cap that story, after doing so well in 97, 98, even 96. I don't know whether you guys are aware of this, but the North Star Ledger made me the state coach of the year.
I do recall that, yes.
That was my last year coaching. That was a pretty damn special way to go out.
Good old Jim Lambert is the person who picks all those teams. He's been writing forever, and he's
is that right?
A legend.
Yeah. The name does.
So, Ian, quickly on the flip side, what was it like for you coming in there and being coached by Coach Conover? Because, obviously, like I said, it takes good, talented coaches to cultivate. What was it about Coach Conover that you felt helped you bring out the best in you? Because, especially in 98, splitting 150 was just ridiculous. And there's a reason why you were a national caliber athlete and you went to go do the things that you did. We talked about it.
Yeah, you know what? Going for coach, like going into the high school, man, he was intimidating. I was scared of him at first, and you know what he did really good too. And this is one of the strongest points I'm going to say for coach. And it's funny because you guys know I listen to your podcast, I think the world of you. And I heard Scotty.
Nope, I think we lost Ian for a second. But
story of my life. He's getting ready to say something nice about me, and you cut him out.
I didn't cut it. Listen, that's the internet. That's what you call it. The government's listening. They decided it couldn't happen.
Yeah, as you said earlier, that technology stuff.
That's Hyatt with that internet.
Tie it with the internet. So we'll continue real quick. So you're there. And now you're making the tough decision to retire. How close, retire from being a coach and going into administration? How close were you allowed to still be to the program as administration? Because I remember, when I came into the high school, we had already known each other. We had a past relationship from my family. And I do remember, you pulling me in after some meets and it was like, saw the results, Cuesta. What happened here? That's not you. And just get in the talk. And I knew and it wouldn't even be like, and there were times you would call me to the speaker. Cuesta, come down to Principal Conover's office. And everyone would look at me and I would know. I'd be like, he's coming to talk to me about my meet. I ran like crap. But but and it was just those cool things that I don't, that made you. And I gotta say, I like Keith Lister. I've interviewed him. Keith was there before. Keith didn't do that with me the last 2 years. And, and I think it was just something that you went out of your way to do when you had bonds with athletes. And so how close did you still try to stay to the program when you went into administration, or were you trying to be hands off to not step on the new coach's toes?
I really was trying to be hands off. But at the same time, I wanted them to know I'm available. I'll come down. I'll juice them up. I'll help them get their head in the right spot. I'll do whatever you think you could use from me. But no, I felt like my time was over. Let the new fellas run with the ball and see what they do. And if they need me, I'm right there in the building.
There you go. Ian's back. Hey, Ian, we lost you.
Hey, man, I didn't even know. I was on a ramble too. I don't even know where I dropped out of.
So you could just start. Go ahead.
You dropped off where you said you guys had on Scott Clayton. And
yeah. So you guys understand, like I've told you guys, I think the world of show. I think you guys do a great job. And one of the things Scotty Clayton said that he thought Coach Bruno did the best. I actually thought of that at Coach Conover. Like he recruited the hallways, like guys like me and Kevin Hester. Like we weren't track guys going into Manchester. He would find people like Mike Hoffman, Gilberto, like these guys that were like key role players. Like he went in the hallways and found them.
Absolutely.
And coach, the thing about running for Coach's Hawks team was like we were like how a football and basketball team were at some schools. Like people wanted to be part of it. People wanted to be a Manchester Hawk track guy. We had like a swagger on us, that's what it was. We walked off the bus like a swagger. We won, and then we went on the bus and we did it with class. And that was Coach's Hawks team. And that's what I remember the most is just him finding people and turning them into winners, and creating a winning culture. Like we thought we were the best. We acted like we were the best. And, and we were the best that year. We were the number one team. We were number one team in the state of New Jersey, and he was the number one coach in New Jersey. Couldn't have written it up. It was like a storybook ending with Coach's career and our careers too, because, most of us were seniors. We were winning since our sophomore year, won our junior year, won our senior years. It was a hell of a ride.
One of the things I'd like to add to that, there were two things, and I'm sure he remembers it, and Alex might even remember. One of the things that really was important to me was when we're coming and we're going to an invitational meet, I wanted everybody on that bus to know that all the other buses that are sitting around there emptying kids out, when they saw that Manchester bus make the turn and come in, they all said, "Oh, no, Manchester." And they knew that. And that's why they got out of the bus with a swagger, and they walked with their chest puffed out, and they kicked ass.
Funny thing is, Coach, you gave that speech as an athletic director, too, twice to me in the auditorium. You gave it to all the athletes.
Yeah. And another thing that I felt was important was after the meet, after your race, how are you going to conduct yourself? I wanted our kids, and we were winners most all the time. Manchester wasn't always a winner in track and field, football, etc. But when we were winners, it really mattered to me how we treated the team that we had just beaten or the individual you had just beaten, how you treated them. I didn't want the swagger at that time. You got it when you go to the line and you're ready to run. You got it when you get off the bus. You finish your race, you turn, you want everyone to know how lucky you feel, and you appreciate the athleticism of the other runners.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like, to me, you can always tell the sign of a good team and a good coach if every kid on that team stays around to the last event is over. And I always remember the Manchester team, like, nobody wanted to leave. Oh, coach, I finished my race. Can I go home with my mom or dad? Like, you could tell. And it was the same when I was at school. Like, we stayed and we cheered on the 4x4. We made sure that we were there for our teammates at all times. And I got that same sense from your guys' team too. Like, everybody was in it. It was one family. You were cheered just as hard for everybody as everyone else was. And to me, that's a great sign.
And it's I'm at a loss for words, and you can write that down in your notebook because that happens about once a century.
I don't think I've ever seen that before in my life. No. Ian, have you ever seen that?
No, not at all. Never.
We get a first on Talking in Ovals here. Coach Conover has nothing to say.
I had said to you guys that I wanted to just mention this. Two things. One, that I had no track background. And I would like to be an example to someone else that's out there that maybe had no track background. Maybe they didn't shoot hoops. Maybe they didn't play football. But it doesn't mean you can't get into the ring, motivate young people, and turn out winners and make a difference with young people. Don't back off and give up simply because you didn't get a chance to run or compete. That's important to me. Another
a very valid point
that I like teaching the high jump and the long jump. And one of the reasons was my gymnastic background. I have always recognized that the human body follows the head. If you want to be a great high jumper, you must have your head higher than anyone else before you tip backwards. If your head is not higher than anyone else, then your hips are going to stop rising and you're not going to have a good jump. Follow me. Head goes up. When the head tips back, the hips rise and you complete the flop. How did I work with that? Ian might remember, or he might have been out with the Tin Man. Not the Tin Man. Been out running a Sarco or something. But I brought the kids in the gym. I put the crash mat under the hoop, and I'd hand them a tennis ball, and they would run up and dunk the tennis ball. Okay, dunk the tennis ball. Now I want you to run up, stick, turn, and dunk it backwards. So they'd go up and dunk it backwards, and some of them would fall into the mat. And then I would have them dunk it backwards, and I'd put a bar up. Dunk it backwards, and when you dunk it, drop your head back and let your hips rise. And they began to get the idea of the flop. And I think it's one of the key reasons, other than the fact that the kids were great athletes and had mega jumps in them, like Skeets and CJ and Hankins and right on down. But that was one of the things I did. In fact, I even would stand under the bar, and when the kid was jumping, I'd drive my hand up into the small of his back and toss him over.
Yeah.
So kids that were at the learning phase that weren't able to go to quite those heights, I'd be able to stand under and hoist them up over the bar.
And I feel like you were brave enough to do that because of your gymnastics background.
Yeah.
You were used to spotting and things like that. You knew how to do it properly. And it's funny because you mentioned just this is an intuitive type of training technique, right? That you and your background, you realize what you needed. I don't know if there's many coaches right now that would think of this style that you're doing. And I feel like if any young coaches are listening right now, in the current generation, you're trying to figure out how to explain, planting on the inside foot, that dry foot, getting the arm over, bringing the head over, popping the hips. You don't always have to be doing it outside. You don't always have to be repping it over a bar constantly. There's other ways that you can get these guys who jump, who more than likely were basketball players at some point. So they're used to trying to do those things. So
I remember basketball players, certainly. I was looking for those ups. I mean, if you're teaching somebody to do a back tuck, you have to have them jump as high as they can jump, toss the head, roll the knees up, boom, land it. That's a back tuck. If you're going to toss your head right away, you're going to land on your ass.
Yep.
It's not going to work. You've got to drive it up first.
So we might be a track program, but I have to ask, did you ever consider starting a gymnastics team at the school? Was that something that was popular in the area?
They have one now.
Actually, I was the head boys gymnastic official in the state of New Jersey for the last 10 years that we had boys high school gymnastics. And I had a girls team in the Whiting school that was so good. Sue Murin, oh my goodness, I had Debbie Mendez, Palatucci. They were so good, and we had the equipment. I tried to convince Jack Du Bois, bring it up, let's get our girls into gymnastics. I would have been the gymnastic coach, and I would have taken that well before track and field. And I'm telling you what, we'd have had a county championship within 2 years with those girls. But the vice principal back then was a guy named John Cruz, and he wanted to play tennis. We didn't have a damn tennis court. We had gymnastic equipment, girls that were ready to go, but he was a vice principal, and I lost out. The girls lost out.
Coach,
well, thank God for Jack Cruz, though. Thank God.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you, Jack. Wherever you are, Jack Cruz. Thank you, because you were able to bring us one of the best track and field coaches in the history of the state. So that's pretty awesome. So, Coach, thinking back now at what you did and what you accomplished with the team, if you could pick your favorite memory? I'm putting you down on the spot. One favorite memory, and don't make it about Ian because he's here. Just forget that he's here. Don't try and make it feel any more special, and he has to. We gave him a whole show, so he doesn't need one. But one memory that you can think of that in your coaching career that sticks out to you, and it doesn't have to be a championship one, just one.
It's not.
Go ahead. Let's hear your best memory.
I had a kid named David Hayes. Now, David was the quarterback of the football team, and he was a kid I taught. Remember, I taught elementary school. So a lot of my kids I had in recreation. I taught their mothers, their uncles, their fathers. Anyway, David Hayes and his brother was Jeffrey. David was my long jumper. We were up against Modern Day. And if we won that meet, it would have been our 50th meet in a row, dual meet in a row. And we needed to win the long jump to win the meet, the final event. And we were down a point or whatever. And David is at the head of the runway, and I'm standing down at the end. And Coach Polakowski says to me, "Aren't you going to go up and talk to him?" And I said, "I'm twice as nervous as he is. I'm going to stay the hell away from him and leave him be." And the kid went out and popped out a middle 19-foot jump and won the event and won the meet. And then we went on and won 63 consecutive meets. And, I don't know where that stands in Ocean County, whether that's the most or in the Shore Conference or I don't have no idea.
Definitely has to be up there. Definitely. So last thing before we go, and this is something that we ask a lot of our guests. You obviously fell in love with the sport through coaching and everything like that. And it's become something, obviously, your son Garrett had a very successful track career and everything like that. It's become something in your family that you love. How do we reach the casual fan? What would you, if you had the idea, if you were sitting there and, the Track Federation of the United States gave you the keys and they said, "Coach, get us some casual fans, make us a popular sport," how would you do it?
Alex, let me just bend the baton a little bit and go back, and then I'll answer that, okay?
Sure.
I want to go back to say something that I can't overlook it. My daughter Adele was a great hurdler.
Yes,
she was a Patriot League champion in the high hurdles at Bucknell, and she was a great hurdler at Manchester. My son Ross was a scrappy doodle hurdler indoors, and I'd never been over a hurdle in my life. So for those people that are saying, "I can't teach hurdles because I've never hurdled," never over one in my life. And yet all three of my children have state gold medals in hurdling, shuttle hurdles, etc. But they do. Now the culture deal. Now my daughter can't slit my throat. The culture deal is, and it is all about culture. It's if you've been in Europe, the average European knows more about high-level track and field than the average American, tons more, and they're excited about it. and you build a culture through the media, and track and field doesn't get it. Track and field, unless it's Olympic years, track and field is a forgotten sport in the American media. I'm afraid it is. And if you want to make a change, you have to have your average people excited about a race that's coming up between the number one person in the world and the number two person in the world. And it needs to be televised, and you got to get them excited. So it's all about the culture. And you also have to remember that in Italy, I spent 2 years in Bagnoli, Italy. And Italians are at that time, all about soccer, football. That was their everything. So they didn't have kids running track. They didn't have kids playing baseball. They didn't have kids playing basketball. Not back when I was over there. Well, actually, they did. They were on base. They were on base. I coached the team on base. So they were nuts over their football. And then track and field worked its way in and became big in Europe. But that's never really happened here unless you're in Oregon or Manchester.
Yeah.
and until track and field becomes more important, a quick thing that someone will say when I say, geez, you should be throwing the shot. And they'll say, what, you mean I should not be playing football? I said, no, you can do both, but you should be throwing the shot. He said, look, I might get a football scholarship. I'm not going to get one for shot put. I said, you could. He said, well, what about after that? I can make money as a football player. Can you make money as a shot putter? And that's the direction it eventually goes.
Yep.
And it's a shame. I was able to win that argument with Andrew Valmon, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to me in my coaching career. The other was having the most unbelievable wife and family. I mean, you guys know the amount of hours where you're gone with track and field. And then I coached football as well, and I officiate. It was just I wasn't home as much as I should have been, and it requires unbelievable family dynamics to allow something like that to happen. And I was fortunate. I was very fortunate. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. And, and I think I could speak for Ian, and I can also speak for Dave. Manchester was extremely fortunate to have you as one of the first coaches to ever be there, as one of the people that built the program. And, you talked about Coach Griff still, having the reins now, and he's a product of you building that foundation and passing it on to so many great coaches and things like that. So,
I appreciate that, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you. For coming on the show. This was a great show. Much appreciated, Coach.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And having Heat there is special.
Definitely.
Long day. Good seeing you again, Alex. Good seeing you again. Yeah. Keep up the good work. This is important stuff.
Thank you so much. Ian, anything you want to say before we jump out of here?
No, just thank you, Coach, for everything you did for me. And, I'll say that on behalf of the boys, too. You know how much we love you, and you're just – always be, a father figure and a mentor, and just, always our leader and our coach. So we love you.
Thanks, Heath. I really appreciate hearing that from you, because I have mutual respect for you and your family. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. Anything you got before we jump out of here?
No, listen, I remember going against Coach Conover's teams when I was in high school. I didn't meet Coach until I started teaching at the middle school. And I actually had I used to have lunch with his wife Jan and Nancy Coyle, and then I was fortunate enough one time to get to Jan's house for like a little party gathering, and that's what I met Coach, and I just found myself like everyone's in the other room, and then it's just I think I was the last one to leave his house that day. We were just sitting there talking about track and field for like hours, and the party is over, everyone's gone, and we were just sitting there talking about track and field, and it was one of the special moments that I've had as a coach. It was just great having you on, and it's we have a lot of the more modern coaches now, so it's great to get some more of an old school perspective, where you didn't especially coming from a small school where you might not have had so many things that other schools had, but it's about culture. It's about making something your own, putting your own stamp on it. And like you said, surrounding yourself with other coaches that you can trust and that you guys can build from within. So I think you kind of nailed so many important things, and it was a pleasure having you on.
And Dave, let me just close with this. I taught with a gal named Sue Exler, and her brother was Bill Bruno. And we mentioned Bill Bruno here. He was the head coach at Asbury Park. He had those kids doing things well before me. He was magnificent. A lot of my strategies were based on Bill Bruno, and he passed away a couple years ago. And that was
yes, he did.
Great loss to our conference track and field.
He became the president of the NJSIA for track and field, and you talk to any coach. Yeah, he was running everything. And if you talk to any coach now, he made so many amazing, wonderful changes for this sport, and he's sorely missed. And he was just another great leader who came from the short conference area, because there's so many of them.
Yep. So once again, I want to thank everyone for listening. And again, I want to give a shout out to Coach Conover for coming on, Rob Conover. Coach, I don't think you have anything to promote currently. If you do, go ahead. Do you have anything you want to promote at all?
No, I don't think so, but thank you, Alex.
Yep. So I'll promote for him. If you want to see anything from Rob Conover, go take a walk into Manchester Township High School, go into that gymnasium and just go look at those banners, look at all the records that were set in his time that still stand. So that is what I'm promoting for him. And, piggybacking on Dave, we have a lot of modern coaches. It was nice to have a more old school coach, but one thing that they all share is you have to care about the athletes, and Coach obviously cares about his athletes. Every coach that we've had on here that has success has all said you got to connect with the athletes. You have to meet them where they are. You have to care. So if you ever want to be a coach and you want to have great athletes, take it from new school, old school, it doesn't matter. You have to care about what you're doing, be passionate about it. And if you're buying into what you're trying to do, your athletes will buy in as well. So
how many Alex, do you think that bailed kids out of jail?
That might be a first.
Leave that alone.
Yeah, we could leave that one alone. That could be for maybe a different podcast. We'll start a new one just for that. But all right, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Find us on the socials. We'll be back again next week. So long, everybody.